Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Startup of the Year podcast. I'm Frank Gruber, and on this episode, I'm going to be talking to Rafiq Ahmed and Mitul Patel about their experiences developing products and their new fund, Dipalo Ventures. But first, I want to talk to you about the .US Veteran Startup of the Year. We'll be looking for innovative startups led by U.S. veterans and or their spouses or dependents. And we'll be selecting the .US Startup of the Year at our 8th Annual Startup of the Year Summit in the fall. They'll compete for a chance at $10,000 in non-dilutive cash from .US. In addition, they'll have an opportunity for other prizes and glory from the regular Startup of the Year competition itself. The application deadline is coming up fast, and it's out there on our website, so go check it out. It's at startupoftheyear.com, or it's at soty.link/SOTYUSVet. Again, it's soty.link/SOTYUSVet. We hope you apply, and if you know somebody that might be a good applicant, please pass that info along. .US is also proud to support the Established community, a thriving community made up of veterans, entrepreneurs, startup teams, industry leaders, all over the world. And so as part of that, we're proud to provide you with a free .us domain and website builder. So if you're interested, you have an idea out there and you want to get it and bring it to life, go to soty.link/US domain, and you can get a free domain and get started right away. All right, now back to our program. We're going to be talking to Rafiq Ahmed, and he's the managing director at Dipalo Ventures, which is an early stage venture fund focused on hardware and hard tech, and they're based out of Chicago. So they're really new, but they're doing some interesting things. Rafiq has got experience in developing mobile products. He used to design at the Motorola Mobility Lab, which is some of the first apps that were out there, and the Mobility Lab was actually acquired by Google, so it became part of Google. He's also the co-founder of Demibooks, which is the first platform for developing interactive book apps on the iPad. And so Demibooks was acquired by Education Development Corporation in 2015. He's got an exit under his belt as well. And Rafiq is actually joined by Mitul Patel, who's their venture partner at Dipalo Ventures. He's the CEO of MP Consulting. So Mitul has developed a variety of products in his career, including phones, wearables, innovative smart home applications, and industrial sensors. So he's going to be joining us as well, and they're really trying to push the boundaries. And I think he has 10 patents under his belt as well over the last decade. So he's done quite a bit in the space and seems like the right fit for this kind of fun. So let's jump into the interview. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey Frank, good afternoon. How are you?
Doing great. Can you guys share, just to kind of kick it off, how you guys got together, how you kind of divide and conquer with this new fund, and maybe a little bit more about the fund?
Sure. I can take a stab and then Mitul will jump in, I guess. Yeah, so Dipalo is like you said, a new fund. We're in the process of raising. We are starting to get active with one or two investments already. Looking at a few other deals. But our thesis is around a space that we see a lot of opportunity in, but not enough venture gets into. So it's connected hardware and hard tech. And so these are generally areas that people in the venture world say hardware is hard and it's complex. It's not that it's hard. You have to know what you're doing. And our background is from that product and design and engineering world. As well as last several years been doing angel investing and such. So
right.
Mitul and I connected to sort of look at this space and see what can we do differently. So yeah, we're looking forward to talking more about that today.
And Mitul, you come from more of an engineering background, so can you share a little bit more about your kind of take and perspective and input into the fund?
Yeah, absolutely. So we look at the fund as an opportunity to not only focus on hard tech and physical products, but also try to bring a little bit of security to the investment and basically provide years and years of, or I would say decades of product development expertise, whether it be supply chain operations or actual physical design, and help de-risk the go-to-market plan for our portfolio. And that's sort of the mashup here of the financial side of what a typical VC engages in, and then we bring a robust hardware competency to
Great.
the team.
And are you focused just on the Midwest, or what's your kind of regional kind of focus for this fund?
So I would say U.S. center, anything that's not Bay Area, Boston, New York per se. So Midwest, yeah, we're in the region.
Okay. And you've got some experience investing in similar types of products. So maybe share a couple. I know there's a couple, one out of Chicago at least, and a couple others. Can you share a little bit more about your background in investing? And then we'll dive into what you're kind of looking for from a startup perspective.
In the fund, we have a couple of companies. One's called New Current. It's a wireless charging platform out of Chicago. And then the other one at the moment is Geobit, which is a tracking device for pets, kids, and lately military assets as well. Um, yeah, it's a new product line that they've been working on. It's been announced. The the ones that we look at again will range from where there's a product that may be in market or is in development. That's where we'll add the most value when something's in development, all the way to potentially material sciences or light technologies, etc. So these are some of the spaces that we find interesting.
Okay. So how early are you looking then?
Well, we have this program that's hands-on. It's what Mitul referred to as the way we de-risk the investment. It's called the residency. So it's a 6-week program. It's not
Mhm.
an accelerator, but it's a 6-week program where we look under the hood in design and engineering disciplines, and
Right.
try to move the needle on some things that matter to the founders. And at the end of that process, we'll have known more about the team. We'll help them tighten up the plan. We'll potentially, bring in our contacts in supply chain, et cetera, to just basically have a better sense of how long it's going to take to build a product. So that's as early, but then opportunistically, we'll look at later stage companies as well. We can do pre-seed all the way through to Series A or B, potentially even C if we need to on an opportunistic basis.
That's great. And so you're looking for hardware, you're looking for hard tech. What are some of the things you're seeing out there that excite you?
Mitul, do you want to jump in? Talk a little bit about some of the things that we've seen.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of uh, consumer tech plays with sensing and monitoring, um, whether it's something with athletics or a wearable of sorts. There's also another big push, which is applicable now with hygiene and sterilization concepts, and that runs the gambit from healthcare to consumer tech when it comes to sterilization.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And then,
Are you seeing people pivoting then from like other products to get into that space, or do you like you mentioned Joybit, working on some things? Are you seeing more companies focusing on quote COVID-19 focused products or health tech or whatnot?
so it's kind of inevitable at this point because of the uh, market. You either have to pivot or you're on hold for six to 8 months here. And so we are seeing quite a few companies pivot to whether it's a permanent business case pivot or a temporary shift, just to ease the supply chain or assist with specific market needs right now. We've definitely seen that pivot occur.
To add a little bit more color to that, I mean, it depends on where a company is in its level of maturity. So if you're a single product company and it does X, you can't just pivot completely. So we've been working with a company that's in sort of the cleanliness space, which in itself is useful. After the current crisis started, the light bulbs went off. Like how do you sort of move this faster? Whether they can or not depends, just because they're in the middle of product development, their supply chain, etc. Others, on the other hand, there's a different company that has a testing platform um, for allergies, and they may be able to do, say, even COVID-19 testing, and how quickly they do also depends on, is there still a market opportunity? So I think every startup's looking at the current scenario, looking at the world, in the next 12 months plus, and seeing not just how they can take advantage of an opportunity, but just how they can be helpful.
All right, so let's kind of go back into you know the companies that you're investing in, and what kinds of investments are you making, and then what kinds of capital are you, um, how much capital is the right capital, I guess, for some of these startups?
In terms of sectors, where we'd like to focus makes sense for the Midwest, makes sense for the U.S. Center. So our thesis prior to the COVID-19 crisis has been food tech, ag tech, medical device, healthcare, industrial broadly. And because of our background, we both come from Motorola, and that's, the Google Motorola world is sort of our very strong ecosystem. So consumer electronics because of our background. So when you look at the world going forward in those sectors, we're going to be a little bit more, I guess, thoughtful around what are some things that are going to work, and certainly in health and food and industrial, there's plenty of things that are much more important or change quickly. What check sizes? Yeah, so ideally, when we have the fund completely up and running, our initial check size in the residency would be about 250K, and then there'd be follow-on investments. Yeah, I suspect the way it's going to play out, I'm sure you'll get into this, but fundraising this year is not going to be fun. I mean, you have to, find me 5-10 years from now and remind me how crazy March and April 2020 was. But initially, we're going to probably write smaller checks as we
Right.
start up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I mean, if you think about it, like you just said, I mean, you're raising a fund, you know, we don't know what that's going to look like for the next 6 to 8 months. So whatever you've got ready to go in deploying, you might want to like slow the roll a little bit to let it last longer. Is that the thought?
Absolutely, and we have a position in companies that make sense. So if we can't write as big of a check, I think most startups now also have to shore up their cash flow, right? And so whether it's our fund companies that we're in discussion with, or in my angel network, so I've been angel investing for several years in Chicago. So every one of them has been going through the math and going through what they can, and as you know from your own portfolio, everyone's sort of reevaluating.
Totally. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so maybe with the companies that are out there, are you currently getting more pitches? I mean, have you been getting a lot of pitches in the last, let's say, couple weeks from companies?
I don't know that it's slowed down, but we haven't really come to market in any big way either. This podcast might actually be our first public, way to say hello.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so what else would you like startup founders to know about you guys? Let's start there. You guys have come from a Google and Motorola background, focused on hard tech. How do you guys approach like I guess metrics in that world? Like what are you looking at for like success with like these early stage products?
Well,
I can,
let Mitul jump in. He's been building hardware products for some time, and I'll give you my perspective as well.
yeah, I'll take
Yep.
this one. So, I think my core tenet is that hardware is not hard. It's a common phrase that people always talk about, but that's not something that we live by. And mistakes can be expensive when you're building hardware, but and mistakes will happen. But it's about handling uh, those mistakes in the appropriate way to not compound issues and um, trying to navigate circumstances, whether it be technical glitches or supply chain has had some COVID-19, for example. How do you navigate that ecosystem?
Uh-huh.
And I think the crux of any startup comes down to building the right team. It starts with the CEO or the co-founders and hiring the right staff, whether it be contractors, helpers, your own full-time staff, whatever it may be. But building the right skill sets on your team at the right time is critical for success. And you don't want to be too early with certain uh, staffing decisions. You don't want to be too late. But if you have the right team, if you have folks wearing multiple hats, it's obviously even better. But that team is the most important piece. And having the right team leads to having a good spec. And that, I would say, is really the crux of what separates successful businesses from those that struggle a lot is, do you know what you're building? Do you know how much it's going to cost? And what does that specification look like? The more detailed the spec, the more successful the outcome of that company will be.
Right. That makes sense. And then, are most of these products that you're working on, where are they built? Are they built are they physically building the prototypes themselves, or are they like working with other third parties to build them, or how does that work?
So we see people finding it much easier to start companies in general, right? In the digital world as well. When you look at hardware, it's easier to go make a prototype. You've got 3D printers, you've got Raspberry Pi kits, you've got Arduino kits. So people will make prototypes. The problem that I think Mitul independently runs a product development agency called MPC. So what he's been seeing, and then what I was seeing on the venture side is folks don't have an idea of how much it actually costs and how long it's going to take. They'll go to Kickstarter and say it's going to take me 6 months and X dollars. And in reality, it's 3X as long or 4X as expensive. And so I think the idea is you really need to design for that manufacturing and that scale. And you've got to have the experience. And that's what we're trying to bring to the table.
That makes sense.
What they're building, yeah, they'll build wherever they're building. In Chicago, it's often at places like an M Hub, or it's outsourced to a product design agency. And I think what Mitul was touching on is that balance between what are the engineers you want to have in house, what do you contract out. For us, one other aspect of what's really important is design, what I call design in the DNA. So just having that sense of not just the product you're building, but why are you making this? Who needs this? Where are the users? Start with humans. And if anything that, we got out of a place like Motorola, I think it's you build for people. And at the end of the day, if teams have that understanding, great. If they've been doing some user validation, etc., great. If not, that's an area that we also can help fine tune plans.
Another really important piece of this, and just touching back upon what you just said, Rafiq, but I would say the lack of supply chain fundamentals is what leads to really poor scheduling and cost forecasts, whether it be internal budgeting or go to market cost of goods sold. Um, Basically, we're finding in the world of fast prototyping and these maker spaces, they're providing value to a certain segment of population that makes hardware dev cheaper up front. But that uh, that access to 3D printing and really quick turn demo kits, whether it be Arduinos or Raspberry Pis, you lose a lot of your plan for scale. And we're just seeing a lot of designs come out that prioritize 3D printing or Arduino based designs, and those aren't necessarily scalable or manufacturable from an injection molding perspective.
They're cute products that they've built with their 3D printer rather than something that can be mass produced. Yeah. Okay. So let's do a little exercise because as you guys were talking, you guys have a lot of expertise in what it takes to bring these products to life. And I feel like, I don't know, can't even tell you how many times I've been asked, well, hey, I've got this idea, Frank. I'd like to do this thing. And do you know anybody that could help me with bringing this thing to life? And it's usually a physical product. And I'm just like, yeah, talk to like somebody at like maybe Indiegogo or Kickstarter about the process of creating that prototype and whatnot. But maybe in maybe a quick, few minutes here, maybe talk through what would the right steps be for somebody like that? Because a lot of times they're like, well, should I go get a patent on this product first? And should I do this or that? You guys already stressed the importance of team, so, but if they don't have a team, let's say they're sitting somewhere where, right now, especially in their home, this burning idea, that they want to get out in the world. What should they do? What are the steps they should take?
For me, I'll be brief. It's to put your thought down on paper. Write it down. Like who are you building this for? What's it going to maybe look like? How are you going to sell it? You may build the world's greatest product, but unless someone buys it, then what's the point? So you need to sort of make a plan. If you're really at that very first stage, and that's true for any business. I think later, if you've got prototypes, you've got a little bit of traction with your team, and you're on your way, and you're looking for financing, then you start looking for angel investors. Before that, probably friends and family, and then after that, some institutional funds such as ours. So for us, we're in this sort of place which we'll figure out, which is we're an institutional check, but we can go fairly early in the process, and maybe even come in at that area between angel and a large VC, if you will.
And from a hardware perspective, I would say for those that do have these thoughts, we get a lot of this, of course. I think the key takeaway is to know what your end goal is, right? So you could want, I'll use the smart light bulb since there's a lot of those. If I wanted to create a smart light bulb, and I thought I had a brilliant idea to develop a smart light bulb, I should then ask myself, do I want to be running a smart light bulb company, or do I want to already take a smart light bulb that's already in the market and provide an improvement or a solution to bringing that with an enhanced feature set that doesn't already exist? And there's a big difference between the two. In one avenue, you turn into a hardware company yourself, where you're worried about supply chain and you're worried about all the logistics involved with making a brand new smart light bulb. And in the other solution, you're a solutions company that is realizing that the market already has 50 smart light bulb companies, and can you apply your novel idea to somebody else's hardware solution? And making that distinction is very, very important early on. Of what it's great that you have an idea, but what do you want to do with that idea, and how do you want to bring that to market? If you want to save the world with a new gadget, that may not necessarily require a ground up hardware design.
That's great point. Yeah, I think you see a lot of that. You see a lot of folks that want to create an additional feature on a product that already exists, and instead they create the whole thing from scratch, which isn't going to necessarily move the needle as much. Okay, great. So you're seeing this stuff early. You're seeing, you're able to kind of fund along the way. Maybe some advice about, like, you talked about people and as a team being important. You talked about listening to your customers or finding customers as part of that. Maybe let's dive into how do you avoid building the wrong product? And I think it goes back to that customer discovery. But is that what you guys think as well?
If you look at why startups fail, really a large number of consumer, I think CB Insights does a survey twice a year. Most of the failure is always because you're building the wrong product that people don't love and don't want to use. So I can't emphasize enough the role of design, and design not just to make it look pretty, but design from a usability and design to actually solve problems that exist, not things that you think exist and want to solve for. So the sooner, and I can't tell you enough stories of how otherwise super intelligent people will come kicking and screaming, into design. That they'll resist it, or just talking to enough users who aren't their friends, and will tell them what they want to hear. So I think
Is that because they're trying to do it all themselves, or because what is the reason for that usually?
that's an interesting psychological question. I mean, I think sometimes we want to do something as entrepreneurs. Look, even before this, I had a startup for 5 or 6 years when you and I met back in Chicago, right?
Right.
And we didn't ask people, did you need this? Do you need Demibooks, this platform to make interactive apps? I mean, we had this idea in our head when Steve Jobs first came out with the iPad, and we went and built it. And along the way, we started to ask people, what do you think, and how do we make it better? So I'm guilty of this myself. But had I asked people, they wouldn't have known exactly what to tell me either. So sometimes you're building products that are really new, and at other times you're building solutions to problems that maybe exist. I think part of it is we want to build things, and we don't want others to maybe say that this isn't what you should be building. But part of it is also it's intimidating. Like, where are all these people out there that I need to go and survey, and how much is it going to cost? And so I think it spreads the gamut, and there are tools. There are easy to sort of low cost ways of getting user feedback that's out there that people can find.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then I guess once you have that thing out there, how do you know when it's the right time to scale? You touched on supply chain earlier. Just want to know, like, what's the right timing? Maybe you've got your Indiegogo or Kickstarter, and you've got traction. At what point do you turn it on?
I mean, my sense of that is when it makes sense to scale is when you've got that product market fit. Scaling means you're going to increase profitability in my book. In some books, it just means getting more users and continuing to lose more money. Which in our world, I mean, you're making a product, it has a cost of goods, you're going to sell it and you're going to make a profit. You don't put 1 million units out there and lose money in the hope that someday you'll make money. So
Mm-hmm.
I think scaling in this world is when you've got that fit, when you're looking at unit economics. Mitul, do you want to add more?
Yeah. So my preference when it comes to these funding campaigns, crowdfunding campaigns, is to focus on manufacturing. If you want to use it as a marketing tool, still use it when you're ready to scale. We find that a lot of companies use these crowdfunding sites to do the initial development, and that turns into a gamble actually, because you're spending quite a bit of somebody else's money, let's say, to do prototyping and development, and gambling that you will get an institutional investment or line of credit or something like that for production, and that's usually not a guarantee.
Right.
And so when you see a lot of these Kickstarter campaigns fail, you'll find that they may have a great video, have a great marketing campaign, but if they use those funds for development and not production, it'll usually end very badly for really the backers and the company.
Right. Okay. And so then, along kind of those same lines, what's the next step as far as, like, they've got their great successful campaign? When's the right time to pitch investors?
I think because we serve sort of both the product development problem and the investment problem early enough, when you've got a little bit more than just a PowerPoint deck, you've put some skin in the game. You've started to make the first iteration of the prototype, and maybe what you're stuck on is, oh gosh, I don't know anybody in China, or I really want to look at other supply chains other than China, or basically I haven't figured out how this really is going to come together in a larger system. So we've got the ability to maybe then help you in this shortened residency period.
Right. And you kind of got a unique approach. So I guess it's not a one size fits all either, because of the different areas that you jump in. But maybe if you could kind of size up the ideal company, like you saw this company, you'd be like, wow, they've got the right people team, they've got the right metrics, they've got the right time, they've got they've got all the different things that we're looking for. What does that look like to you? Like, is there a way to kind of put some kind of like quantifiable metrics around it?
I mean, we're looking for disruptive potential, and I know everybody's looking for that, but often, problems just aren't big enough, and you haven't got a unique solution. So you can have a nice business, but it's not necessarily VC backable. Unfortunately, that is very true. We're looking for people that know what they know and know what they don't know. Some entrepreneurs are just not coachable, unfortunately, and so you try, and people, to some extent, if you are crazy enough to start a startup, then to a great extent, you're your own leader. You've got your vision, but we still want to see folks that are easy to work with and then can learn from mentorship, etc. Another point I want to bring up is just valuation. And there is going to be a change. There is already a change in valuation as we go forward, right? We're in deals now where larger VCs are going to make much more outrageous demands on notes and discount rates and such. We're going to see founders, taking down their lofty expectations quite a bit. So we're looking for good value. Typically, the company that comes into our residency is a below five. If I can throw a number out, maybe below 5 million in terms of valuation, um, and then you go from there.
Okay, that's helpful. Yeah, I think we've got a lot of startups that listen, and so I wanted to kind of make sure we're painting the right picture of the right types of companies that you're looking for, to kind of help vet and maybe help them maybe match up with what you're doing. So that's helpful. Okay, so let's talk about the vision for the fund. Like, what are your kind of short-term and long-term goals, and where do you see this kind of going in, like, say, 5 years to 10 years?
I can go first. Mitchell's probably got some ideas, but really this year is all about survival, right, for everybody. And for us, that means to get started, to make some sound investments, which we had done some due diligence on some companies that were in progress. We're hoping to write a couple of checks here in the near term, and continue raising. I think our thesis is solid. We're looking at sectors that are generally quite complex, but require investment. Why? Because we live in a physical world, so that doesn't go away. This intersection between hardware and software is very much here, and there's nothing in this COVID-19 situation that sort of tells me I should stop doing what I'm doing. We believe in this, and it's a longer term play. In 5 years, yeah, hopefully we're working on Fund 2. Hopefully, we've got a great portfolio that we've already assembled, and we've got some great founders and investors that are happy with the performance. So we clearly see this as a long-term play. And the last thing I'll say really is this is a great time for folks who are looking at investments, and everyone's worried about the stock market, as they rightly should be. We've all lost money in it in some shape or form. It'll come back, hopefully. But it's also a good time to be diversified, and I think venture offers that opportunity. Startups, innovation, all of these things are not going away. Creativity is not going to die tomorrow.
Yep, no, that's a great point, and I'm glad you brought that up. As you see, everyone that's quarantined at this point coming out with new shows on the internet. Creativity is flourishing. I've seen a lot of my friends that are product people or whatnot launching new products. Like there's a lot.
Don't bring up Tiger Shark. I repeat, Tiger,
Tiger,
whatever that guy's
Tiger
Tiger
King. Yeah. That's a whole nother podcast. But yeah, no, that sounds really. I mean, that's a great point though about it will come back, and I think that we're hopeful that'll happen from a stock market perspective. But these companies are also out there continuing to move forward, and a lot of them now, some of the ones that you just mentioned that you're working with are targeting some of the issues that are out there and making a difference. So I think that's really important for not just this country but globally. So all right, so let's share. Mitul, did you have anything else you wanted to share about short-term, long-term goals?
No, I think Rafiq covered it well.
Okay, cool. And then final question, I think, unless I missed anything, is just like any other info you want to share, any plugs, any like how and then how people can get in touch with you about your fund.
2 plugs. One is info@dipaloventures.com, and it's DIPALO. But yeah, it's info@dipaloventures.com. You can find us on LinkedIn, and yeah, we're going to be doing a little bit more. One of the things that's going to be hard is we're not physically out there, and I hope that Startup of the Year gets going again somewhere. A lot of our work is to meet the founders in person in every city out there, like Indianapolis or Minneapolis or Wisconsin, up in Detroit. So that's going to be hard. We're going to have to do a lot more virtual pitches, but we're willing to meet folks where they are. And I want Mitul to talk a little bit about the PPE work that he's been doing.
Yeah, so we've been we've been building. Well, there's a big group in Chicago that have come together. It's been quite impressive, actually. It's been product companies, competitors from a design firm perspective. It really doesn't matter. There's been a large group of engineering folks, mechanical, electrical, software, all coming together to build PPE solutions for our local community. And each firm has sort of taken on its own key project. M-Hub's taken on ventilators, MPC's taken on what we're calling PAPRs, or it's forced air respirator, basically. So it's a little bit better than N95, but sort of in the same. If there's a ward or a COVID, like a big center that's COVID only, it makes sense for folks to have a full mask apparatus with filtered air blowing into their face. And our firm's taken that on, and so we're through this mess that we're in, trying to use our skills where we can, I guess, to protect the real frontline workers and the heroes that are trying to keep us all healthy. So,
well, thank you for doing that. It's a real hole right now in the country as far as there's not enough protective equipment out there, personal protective equipment, as you mentioned, and anything we can do to help get the right things in the right hands is a huge thing for the country. So thank you for doing that.
There's a GoFundMe page that's on the Dipalo Ventures LinkedIn page. There's face shields that are being made and sent out to all kinds of hospitals. So yeah, we hope this thing comes to an end soon. We can't wait to get out again. So.
Right, but in the meantime, you guys are making an effort to basically redirect some of the energy towards creating the products that are needed in the market as of right now, which is super important. So we appreciate that.
And it's amazing that so many people are really across the world. That's one of those silver linings, I guess, in this.
Thanks so much, Rafiq and Mitul. You guys are doing some great work. Keep it up. Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Well, thanks again to everyone who's been listening along on this episode. We hope to have another one soon. And remember, in the process, keep starting up. Your ideas are worth getting out there.
Thanks for listening to the Startup of the Year podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll be back with another episode soon.